Hi guys, welcome back to Canary. Good to see you back here. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. As you can see, something a bit different for you today. Jacob and I are joined by former Norwich City centre-half, Hall of Famer, captain, 94-95 player of the season, and the first player that Norwich paid £1 million for, Jon Newsome. Jon, thanks for joining us, mate. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. That was a bit of an introduction, that wasn't it?
It was. I thought you didn't spend that long at the club, really. There's a lot of accolades there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll go into it obviously, but I absolutely love my time down at Norwich. Still got a massive affinity for the club. My daughter was born in Norwich, so she's a bit of a undercover Norwich City fan when you're doing well.
Good.
So yeah, I've got real fond memories of the place, and visited it a few times, since I've been back, and just love the club, love the place.
Superb stuff. Jacob, just to check in with you, you all good?
Yeah, well, looking forward to kind of divulging and going over some, not traumatic, but a lot of key highlights, I think, over a short period of time.
An awful lot happened, which we will get on with. So let's crack straight on. Being a Norwich podcast, we obviously want to focus mainly on the Norwich years, but to provide a bit of context for the people whose maybe memory of the 90s is hazy, or younger fans that have heard it secondhand through parents and grandparents, we'll sort of bookend the Norwich years with Leeds and the move to Sheffield Wednesday. So let's start at Leeds, the 91-92 season, Jon, your first season at Leeds after you moved from Wednesday. What are your memories of that season generally?
Well, it's a good number of years ago now, as you've just touched on. So before you guys were even on the planet, I think. But I remember I'll wind it back a bit further. I was at Sheffield Wednesday as a kid and came through and made my debut, and then got sort of like put to one side for about 18 months, and my contract was up, and Ron Atkinson offered me a new contract, and I turned it down, and a couple of days later, Leeds United came in for me, and Howard Wilkinson, who had been the manager at Sheffield Wednesday when I was an apprentice, and he took me up to Leeds. So unfortunately, I got a bit of a knee injury, which was just like an inflammatory thing in pre-season. But back in the day, when I'm talking like a bit like a dinosaur, I suppose, but you see a player get an injury now, and they say, oh, he's going for a scan. He has an MRI scan. They find out what grade it is, and no, there was none of that. It was literally the physio stuck his big fat thumbs in your leg, and it was like a pain level of 1 to 10, and effectively I was out for about 3 months, where I even had an operation on my knee, and that didn't rectify the issue, and then they sent me for a scan.
After the
yeah. So as you can see, that's what we were dealing with back in the day. And then I got back fit, and obviously the first team were doing really well. And when I'd signed there, Howard had said to me, "I want you in my first team this year," which is what I wanted to hear. That's all I wanted to do. That's why I left Sheffield Wednesday. I wanted to play football. And good friend of mine, Mel Sterling, who was right back at the time, flying Zico, and he got an ankle injury, and he was having jabs. And as I was getting fit, I started sort of like getting drafted into the squad, and came on a sub at Tottenham, and managed to score a goal, which was all a bit surreal, really. And then we had the run into the end of the season, and that was a little bit well documented, I think, really, that Man United were going for their first title in 26 years, and the rivalry between Leeds and Manchester United is off the charts. Although I do liken it to the rivalry between Norwich and Ipswich. I think it is just as vicious, really. And we managed to pip them at the post on that crazy day at Sheffield United at Bramall Lane.
What a game to score in, by the way. Huge game.
Craziest game of football I've ever played in. From being knee-high to a grasshopper. Honestly, it was I mean, obviously, going Sheffield lad, Sheffield Wednesday fan, going and playing at our arch rivals, knew off the team because I've been around Sheffield, sort of thing. And yeah, I look back on it and probably wasn't as nervous, or probably wasn't didn't probably realise how big a game it actually was. Obviously, with later years, you look back and then do realise it. And yeah, it was just a crazy game. Own goals and horrible pitch and horrible footballs and windy and yeah, and it culminated that we won the game. But again, Manchester United were playing Liverpool, but they didn't kick off till after our game had finished, which you'd never have today. Everybody, towards the end of the season, everybody kicks off at the same time. So we'd sort of like given them something to think about, and they went to Anfield. Ian Rush scored his first goal he'd ever scored against Man United in about 500 games or something stupid. And yeah, we realised we'd won the league, and that was it. A bit of a party. So yeah, great season, or great finish to the season for me, and I managed to scrape in and get myself a medal. I just got enough games. So,
can you remember what the cut-off for the games was? Because I think I'm right in saying you made 6 appearances that season.
I made 6 starts and 4 subs.
Right.
So it counted as 10 appearances, and the crazy thing was you had to play 25% of the games, and you played 42 games. So even if you got on for 5 seconds, it counted as an appearance.
Right. Okay, I'm with you.
You couldn't play 10.5 games, or you couldn't have 10.5 appearances. What I mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I literally just scraped in, really.
Sorry, Jared. How's that feel like after all that season? I know obviously you haven't played all of it, but you're kind of in that last run-in. Does that feel like, is it elation? Is it like we've done it? Or is it like exhaustion and then kind of go again? Because you see like the top players, I don't know.
For me, it was just really delight and thankful that I'd actually got involved. I'd been involved, and I was playing first team football. And I mean, the bonus of actually winning the league was just off the charts. Really, that was just verging on ridiculous. So for me, it was right. Got to try and secure a place in the squad, in the starting 11 for the following season, and I was playing right back, which is not my favourite position. I'm a centre back, which obviously, that's why Norwich bought me. But when you're 20, 21 years of age, you'll play anywhere, won't you? So, yeah, and I think a lot of the more experienced lads, it was the culmination of a really hard, tough season, and a season that nobody had, foreseen that Leeds were going to be up there and challenging for the title, sort of thing. So it was a bit of a surprise to everybody outside the club as well. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously celebrations, and we'd actually got another game. We got the last game of the season was Norwich.
Weird.
Yeah. So the week after we'd got Norwich City. So which I think again was a strange one, because I think you were only allowed 2 substitutes at the time, and it was and the team sheets went in, and they put a goalkeeper on the bench,
right,
as one of the 2 subs, and we were like, what's all this about? And it turned out that if we'd beaten Norwich something like 16-0, then we'd have got relegated. So they'd obviously put a goalkeeper on the bench just in case.
He had a shock.
Goody got injured.
Yeah.
And if he got injured in the first 5 minutes, you didn't want someone. You know what I mean? It was all a bit strange. Anyway, I think we beat them 1-0 in the end. But and then I was going to say the celebrations started, but they didn't. The actual celebrations continued. So
yeah, I bet it was a good night or two. So you sign for Leeds, you win Division 1 title in your first season, you qualify for Champions League football for the 92-93 season. What's that like? I mean, you're a young guy at this time. What is it like playing Champions League football your second season at Leeds?
Yeah, a bit mental, really. We drew Stuttgart away in the first leg. I went and I think I was sub, so didn't get to play. And then we played them at home. I think we got beat 3-0 away, and then we beat them 4-1 at home, and they went through on the away goal.
Right.
But then it turned out they played too many foreign players. They put like a centre back on with 10 minutes to go, and you were only allowed so many foreign players on the pitch at one time.
Right.
So effectively, they should have been thrown out. But because it was Leeds, they were like, "Oh no, you've got to play this one-off game." We had to play on the following Friday. We had to play a one-off game against Stuttgart in a neutral ground, which turned out to be the new camp in Barcelona.
Nice.
So we went to Barcelona. I'm thinking, oh, I'm not going to play because he's not playing at the moment. And he named the team like an hour before kickoff, and I was playing. So yeah, that was a bit surreal. That you're playing in the new camp against Stuttgart, and there was about 20,000 supporters who made it there. So it was like playing a reserve team game.
Yeah.
The stadium is so vast. So we did that, and then we got through them, we beat them, and then we played Rangers in the Battle of Britain, as they called it. So yeah, played up at Ibrox and played down at Ellen Road. So yeah, just in a matter of 18 months, gone from probably like playing in the reserves at Sheffield Wednesday, turning my contract down, to winning the first division and playing European Cup or Champions League football, which was just all a bit crazy, really.
Yeah. Yourself at that moment, you have to are you looking at it like when you're in that moment, like I'm playing like massive, like the new camp, that's massive. I know Ellen Road is huge, but that was me, I'd be walking out of new camp thinking I've made it almost.
I was like, what am I doing here, really? This is just mental, really. And one of the stories, it was before mobile phones, really. And I remember we came in after the game and we beat Stuttgart. And in the dressing room, I mean, what's this all about? Was a payphone on the wall. And I knew my mates were watching the game at home. So like all the lads are celebrating. I'm putting like pesetas, which you won't know about. That's before Euros. And I'm feeding this telephone with pesetas. I rang one of my mates' houses where all the lads were watching it. And I was like, whoa, like this like it's just ridiculous, really. Just mental.
Superb. The Champions League campaign, I'm sure it was great fun, but is it fair to say the league form suffered? Finished 17th that year. Was it because of the Champions League football? Is there a lot of factors?
I don't know what it was. I mean, some people said, oh, it was the back pass rule that got brought in, and I'm like, well, I played another like 8 seasons or 9 seasons and never really had a problem with the back pass rule. Or I don't know. It was just one of these things that we couldn't win away. We couldn't win away from home. I think all season we never won a game away, an away game. It was just one of them crazy things that happens. And I think the club was in a bit of a transition. I think the year before, when we won the title, some of the players were probably getting to the end of their careers. Whether we'd won the league and we all thought it was a little bit easy, and the following season wasn't going to be that difficult, and I really don't know. It could never be anything that I could put my finger on, really. But yeah, disappointing campaign, really.
You played plenty of games, though. I think it was 37 games, Premier League at least. Did you feel a big or a key part of the team at that point?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I felt like I was sort of like becoming a first team regular. But I suppose my issue I had at the club, my issue I had at Leeds was that I'd gone there under Howard, and I thought Howard always viewed me as being a young lad, because he'd had me as an apprentice. And then I think sometimes that happens in football, where you don't get viewed or looked upon or treated the same as the experienced pros.
Yeah.
And that was apparent when I signed for Norwich. Obviously, you go in and they paid few quid for you, etc., etc., and all of a sudden people treat you with a lot more respect, and I didn't feel like I really had that at Leeds.
And
so
did that continue through the 93-94 season?
Yeah,
you made less appearances then. Were you getting the feeling that you were sort of not getting phased out, but you weren't playing as many games? Was the writing on the wall?
Yeah, it was even more so then, because I think in the 93-94 they'd signed David O'Leary.
Yeah.
So David O'Leary was starting like quite a number of games, but he had like a major Achilles tendon problem. So he'd like start a game and after like 4 minutes break down, and then I was sub and he'd be like, right, get stripped, you're going on and playing, and then the week after I might play, and then the week after that David O'Leary would be back in and he'd last like 20 minutes, or you know what I mean, and for nothing else it knocks your confidence. And I think like all players, I'm a confidence player. So when you're full of confidence and you feel good about yourself, you play your best football, which is what I did at Norwich. When you feel wanted, when you feel loved, when you feel a part of it, that's how most players work, really. And so yeah, and then that season I was in and out and felt like I was getting dropped or getting bypassed quite a little bit, and then
someone that could only last 4 or 5 minutes.
So long, and I was unsure what was going to happen, and then we got. It was in the close season that at the end of the 93-94 season, and I'd got a phone call from a reporter who I'd done a few interviews for, and he just said to me, look, I'm just letting you know, because obviously the players are sort of like the last ones to find out, really, but Norwich have made a bid for you, and it's been accepted by Leeds. Obviously, don't do anything about it and wait until you hear from the club, but I just thought I'd keep you in the loop. So, and that was about 2 weeks before the club actually then contacted me so obviously they'd accepted the bid, and then they were putting into place who they wanted to replace me with, etc., etc. So, and then, like I say, 2 weeks later, I came home and got an answer machine message from Howard Wilkinson's secretary saying the manager wants to speak to you. Come down to the ground. So I did, and he just said, look, Norwich have made a bid for you. I'm signing somebody else. You're not going to be playing. You're not going to be part of my starting 11. You need to be playing. So, what do you want to do? And I said, yeah, I'll obviously go down and speak to them.
Did you have any idea of the fee then?
No idea whatsoever. Absolutely no idea. I got an agent, so I'd started working with an agent probably about 2 years before that. So at the end, halfway through my second season, there was an agent who looked after quite a number of the Leeds players, and I signed up with him. And so I rang, he called him Hayden. So I rang Hayden and just said, look, this is what's happened. And he's like, right, yeah, let's go down tomorrow. So
is that a chat with John Dean then at that point when you go?
Yeah. So what he said was, why don't you fly down from Manchester? It's easier than obviously the trek from Leeds. Yeah. So we drove over to Manchester and we flew down to Norwich Airport, got picked up, went down to the ground. John Dean was there, Gary Makeson, who obviously I knew from Sheffield Wednesday. So I was one of his apprentices when he was at Sheffield Wednesday, so I knew Makey from that way. And also Robert Chase was there. So they showed us around the ground, sat down, we had talks, we chatted about this, that, and the other, and then obviously talked about my contract. I was more than happy to come down and sign, and we agreed, and we agreed on everything. And then he said, right, we want to do a press conference a little bit later this afternoon. Let's have some lunch. So we had lunch and wait for this press conference, etc., etc. And it was only when we started to do the press conference that somebody actually said to me, so John, what about the fee? I don't know if anybody's got any footage of the press conference, but I actually said, I don't even know what a fee is. I had no idea. And they were like, well, it's £1 million. You're our first £1 million signing,
and you had no idea.
No idea.
What?
Because it's actually irrelevant to the player, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
it was actually irrelevant to me what Norwich City were paying Leeds for my services. It made no difference to me. You know, way before when I played football, there was the thing about players got a cut of the transfer fee, and that went, that went in the 70s, I think 80s or something. So yeah, so it was irrelevant to me in some respect, and I suppose sort of like put it on my toes a little bit, sign a press conference, loads of press guys, and all of a sudden, bosh, you've got this like, oh, you're a million, highest paid, our biggest transfer, first £1 million. I was like, but in all honesty, to me, I just thought, well, it don't really make that much difference. It's obviously, like you say, a bit of a tag to carry around, but if anything, it makes me like doubly determined that I'm going to come down here and show that I'm good value for money, and show people that I'm a good footballer and I can do the job that they're paying me to do, sort of thing. So
that's a good attitude to have. Were you quite a mentally strong player generally, do you think?
Yeah, I think I was. I think it was sort of like from being, I don't know, 10 years old, I was always like the captain of the club or captain of the team, and going through, and was always deemed to be, I suppose, a bit of a leader. When I was an apprentice, I was like the head boy, and so you're in charge of all the jobs and the players, and so yeah, I think it was something that was probably within my makeup. But I think I also try and be quite an optimistic kind of guy. So for me, it was like an opportunity rather than even when the club said, "Look, we're selling you. We've accepted a bid." I wasn't then upset that I was leaving. I was excited about my next opportunity and thinking, well, that's one chapter of the book closed. Now's my opportunity to rewrite another chapter, sort of thing.
I asked about that, John. Actually, like, does looking back at kind of your career in general, these transfer moves, like the speed of it seems just so quick. Everything's so helter skelter. Like you say, it kind of, you only realise actually the whole thing, I guess, when that reporters are saying, well, you're £1 million. Does that then hit you then, or are you like, it just is what it is? Like you say, chapter done, new chapter, and then just play. You're in a bubble, I guess, aren't you, when you're in a playing career?
That's exactly what it is. You're in a bit of a bubble, you know what I mean? And like the people who are surrounding you. I've got my agent. I'm obviously then sat with John Dean and Gary Megson, and Maggie's telling me what a great club it is and what a great part of the world it is to live, and you love it down here, big man, and all. They're all really positive, and you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm getting into this sort of thing. And then we obviously had the summer break, so this was at the end of the '94 season. So I think I signed quite early, really. So we had the summer break. So I come down to Norwich a couple of times looking for places to live and that kind of thing, because obviously you've got the upheaval of moving house, and then obviously John Dean had said, "Look, I'm going to make you my captain." So I was like, wow, that's quite a big leg to have, especially coming into a club that have been really successful over the last couple of years. You know what I mean? They've done the European bit, and there's some big names. You know what I mean? Obviously Gunny and Mark Bowen and people like that, Ian Crook, John Polston. So there was some really experienced, established players, and for him to stick the armband on me and say, right, you're the man, was a real boost for my confidence, I think, more than anything else. That responsibility of, wow, these guys actually believe in me so much that I'm going to go stick my chest out and run through brick walls for them.
What's that dynamic like coming into a dressing room? And I'm assuming that people like Brian Gunn are quite a big dominant character in the dressing room. And then you're named captain. What's the dynamic like there? The new lad's captain. How did that work itself out?
Yeah, it's a tough one, really. I remember coming in for the first day of training, and you sort of like introduced to the lads, and taken up to the training ground, because obviously you've no idea, where things are. All I'd done was turn up at Carrow Road, and at that time we didn't have is it Cowley?
Cowley, yeah.
Yeah, that was like a plan. That was it, like the ground had been bought and they were going to build a new training ground, but we trained up the road at some
Strauss?
Yes, yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
So they took me there and introduced me to the lads, and then it's just out, go and do your training, and then before you know it, probably the second week of pre-season, you're off, you're away, you're doing a pre-season tour, and you're mucking in with the lads, and you get to know them a bit better because you're spending 24 hours a day with them, and then that's when you gel. And but yeah, I mean, if I look back now, quite a daunting experience, I suppose, walking in there as the 24-year-old new kid who's been given a captain's armband. And don't get me wrong, the lads gave me a bit of stick about it, you know what I mean? Once you settled in, you got a few digs in the ribs about it, and it's how you react, isn't it? That's the whole makeup of a dressing room, I suppose.
Let's talk about the football then in that 94-95 season. I was looking back at the history books, and you played Leeds. I can't remember. I think it was the home tie against Leeds first, fairly early on in the season. Beating them, what did that feel like, having just moved from Leeds?
Yeah, it's obviously they come to town, and you're wanting to get one over on them, aren't you?
Yeah.
And I think it was a night game, if I remember rightly. Oh no, was it a Saturday? No, it was a Saturday, yeah. And the other thing is as well, you're then playing against like your ex-teammates who, 3 months ago you were best buddies with, or and then you've got a 50-50 challenge, and you're trying to leave a mark on them, and so it's the dynamics of it is all a bit strange. But obviously, I wanted to get one over on them, and thankfully we did that day.
How did you find like the Carrow Road experience and stuff? Obviously, Ellen Road's massive. It's like Leeds are known for their support base. Did it like take you by surprise? Like, because obviously Norwich is known as, from people on the outside, a bit cooped off from the rest of the world. Did it kind of surprise you that it's so intense here?
No, it didn't surprise me. If anything, I was probably pleasantly surprised by it. But I loved that, like, that family, that togetherness, that wherever you went in the city, everybody was. I mean, obviously Leeds is a one club city, but everywhere you went in the city, everybody's like mad for it, and I suppose being sort of like out on its own a little bit, which Norwich is, you're surrounded by, or everybody's invested into the club, aren't they? There's sort of like no external distractions, where I suppose we're living in, you're a Leeds player, there's people coming into the city of Leeds from all different aspects, all different cities, and so everywhere you went, or everywhere I went, obviously as the new £1 million captain signing, blah blah blah, people were just so lovely, and I ended up making a good couple of friends, and still keep in touch with them now, and even back then they were like, oh, because people would say to you, oh, you've got to live in Norwich for 10 years until people accept you. And I'm thinking, I was like, well, I've only been here 10 minutes, and people are lovely, whether that was the football connection and that was the football thing, that helped me out in that. But yeah, like I say, I've got massively fond memories of living there and being there, and I really loved my time down there, and everybody made me welcome, like so welcome.
Everyone says that about Norwich.
Yeah.
Always do. Anyway, fair to say that season didn't go to plan on the pitch, but I did notice that we still managed to beat Ipswich twice. What are your memories of those games?
Well, again, I mean, we just touched on it a little bit earlier, like, oh yeah, we've got this like, local derby. Well, we live in Sheffield. Your local derby is like 5 minutes down the road, or you draw a 30-minute circumference around Sheffield. You've probably got like a dozen football clubs. Going, oh yeah, local derby Ipswich. It's like an hour's drive away. That can't be a local derby, can it? You know what I mean? It can't be very, because not be much history, or they can't, it's not going to be ruthless. Like, oh my God, it was the run up to the game. That's all anybody would talk about. You've got to beat them. You've got to beat them. Don't care what happens. You've got to beat them this season. And you're like, and then obviously you get to the game and you play the games, and you realise just how big a rivalry it is, and so it was mad. I think I scored in one of them.
I think you did, yeah.
Yeah, I think I scored in one of them, and I think Rob Newman scored at Portman Road, and yeah, it was a free kick, and I had it down to him, and he stuck it away, and like the world had gone mad when we beat them.
It's a big deal down here.
Yeah, you raise your game in those ones, like the bigger occasions, like, or were you one of those players who was like, every game I'm giving 100%?
Yeah. To be honest with you, when you're playing at that level, you literally have to you literally have to be at your absolute best every week, and that's what I had to do anyway. I had to be at my absolute best every week, and when I wasn't, I could tell, and I knew, and my performance wasn't as good, and so you've got to motivate yourself, and you've got to get up for the game, you've got to give it your all. I look back at some of these old players now, and oh yeah, I was an alcoholic for like 10 years, and I was pissed and all the game, and I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
I was like regimented, living my life right, like carbs and water and doing it all right, and it was still really tough. So, but yeah, it was just proper. You got to be in there, and like you said, the Premier League. I mean, Man United come to town, Liverpool come to town. They're massive games that you want to impress in, aren't they?
Of course they are. We'll get on to relegation very shortly, but I just want to talk about off-the-field stuff very briefly. I think I'm right in saying Efan Ekoku was sold in the October to Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Remind us, or set the scene. What happened though? How good was Efan for Norwich? Why he was sold, and what effect it had on the team?
Well, I obviously had like, when did we start? Middle of August.
Yeah.
So I had probably like 12 weeks to play football with a guy. Obviously knew of him, played against him. Great pace, good finisher, ran the channel, stretched the game for you. And I think they sold Efan, and then did they sell Mark Robbins as well
in the January? I think that was. It was a bit later, but yeah, you're right.
And obviously in the summer they'd sold Chris Sutton. But they'd said when I signed, Chris Sutton had not left the football club, but they said, look, we are selling Chris Sutton. He will be leaving the club in the next couple of days. So I was aware of that. But you sort of like go from having experienced strikers who know the game and play the game, and when you're up against it, you're asking them to do a job, and it just, for me, it just leaves a big hole. It just leaves a big hole, and I think that there was two circumstances I think that added greatly to the club being relegated. It was the sale of Efman and Mark Robbins.
How much of an effect did losing John Dean in the January have? He was, I think he was replaced with a caretaker manager initially, wasn't he?
Yeah, he left, and I think Meggie took over, didn't he?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Megson took over. So yeah, that was not great. He'd obviously brought me in. Really nice guy. Got a lot of respect for him. And so it's sad to see somebody go like that, because especially when they put as much faith in me as an individual as what they had, and spent that money, and and I just felt that we were doing we weren't far off. We were doing okay, you know what I mean? And then it was the back end of the season where, if you look at the results, it was just like defeat after defeat, and most of them were like by the odd goal. And that's something I touched on earlier. I think it's something like 4 of the defeats that we had by the odd goal. We hit the woodwork some like at least once, if not 3 times in every game. It's just one of those where you just go in. We just can't catch a break, really.
Villa put the final nail in the coffin, if you like. But the week before, you were away at Leeds, weren't you?
Yeah.
What was that game like for you personally? Because obviously you got the attachment. We've already spoken about it, but that was an even bigger game than the home leg, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and we went there, and I thought we'd done more than enough to get something out of the game. And they got a really dubious penalty, and then with like 15 minutes to go, they were on the touchline shouting, we've got to score, we've got to win the game. So we were all bombing forward, and then we got done on this with a bit of a sucker punch late in the game. And we came off, and when we come off and we're in the dressing room gutted, thinking like we've been relegated, and everybody's like, "Oh no, we're not relegated yet," and we're like, so a draw would have been a really good result.
Oh,
yeah, honestly, and it was like, this is just becoming a bit of a nightmare, really,
Yeah, absolutely. What were your reflections on relegation generally, John? Like, you it's your first season at the club. You've been named captain, player of the season. Like, I mean, I imagine it was absolutely gutting.
Oh, I was devastated. I'm absolutely devastated. And you know what? Here I am, 25 years later, and you're still talking about it, and it's something that sticks with you, and it's a tag in a label that gets, that you can't get away from. So yeah, I was disappointed, but I was a bit angry as well. I was angry how I felt that the club had not given us the best opportunity. I think if we'd have kept Efan, if we'd kept Robbo, we wouldn't have been relegated that season.
I think a lot of people feel like that.
I mean, we wouldn't have got relegated that season, and that it was things like that, and that's no disrespect to the lads who came in, because I think we got Adin Adiakinbai who came in, and we got Jamie Curtin who came in, and both great lads ended up going on and making real good careers. I think Jamie's still playing. Had great careers, great footballers, but at that time, it was really, really unfair to have like 2 18, 19-year-olds leading the line in the Premier League.
It's a lot to ask.
Responsibility on their shoulders when they just come into the game and come into the first team. You've got all that furore about it, and it's hard. It's hard, especially for strikers, because they're sort of like judged on the amount of goals that they score, aren't they? So you get in the first team as a striker and you play 4 or 5 games, you don't score a goal. Everybody starts talking to you about, you're on a drought and you lack of confidence. And I just felt it was really, really hard for them, and it just didn't help the team really.
You feel the squad felt like yourself, like you're saying you've lost your 2 main strikers. Did the main characters not maybe voice up their opinions, but you could feel everyone was a bit disgruntled for the remainder of the season, like they're angry at the club, really, that they've kind of left you in a position where you're never going to really achieve?
Yeah, you were, but then there was I think then the club were linked with, strikers, and we never and they didn't get anybody over the line, and then eventually we signed Ashley Ward from the group, and Wardy was great, absolutely great for us, but it was just too little, too late. If he'd have come in 2 months prior, we might have had a bit better of a chance, more of a chance, sort of thing. So I do feel it was a bit of a mismanagement, really, from above that didn't give the manager or the squad the opportunity, really.
Plenty of change in the summer of '95. New gaffer comes in, Martin O'Neill. Can you remember where you were when you heard about it? What was the deal? How did the players find out about that?
Well, what happened was I got pulled into the club in the close season by Robert Chase, and he said to me, "Look, Aston Villa have made an offer for you, like a good offer where we're going to make profit. But I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay, and I want the club to push for promotion to the Premier League next season." So I was like, "Yeah, I'm well up for that." And I actually also feel, partly responsible, sense of responsibility that I've played a part in this club that's got relegated, and if you're telling me that we're going to go hell for leather and we're going to try and get promotion, then I'm in. You know what I mean? I'm in. I want to put right what's deemed as what's already been done wrong. So he made a bit of an amendment to my contract. Got a loyalty bonus at the end of my contract, and he'd said if I sell you this season, I'll pay you your loyalty bonus. So it's just a bit of a like feather in your cap, really. So I was like, yeah, I'm in. I'm happy to do that. And then obviously we hear the news about Martin O'Neill. I think I must have heard it from either TV or maybe one of the lads had rang and said, "Have you seen this?" And so yeah, when thought great, you know what I mean, up and coming manager. Obviously knew him as a player at Nottingham Forest and at Norwich, and went into it with an open mind and with the thoughts and the opinion, really, that we were going to give it a real good go to get up to the Premier League.
The team on paper that season, I mean, you hear about these names through parents and that, if you can't remember it, but you think Gunn, Goss, Eadie, Bowen, Adams, Crook, Fleck, yourself, like that's a good team on paper, right? Was the expectation to bounce straight back up? That was the whole squad set on that? Was that the objective, if you like?
Massively, yeah. That was the main aim. That was the one thing that we were all in it together, and we knew that we didn't want to play in the Championship or the First Division or whatever it was at the time. There's only one place to play, and I think where it hits home more, or did so for me, more than ever, was when the fixtures come out.
Okay.
They release the fixtures before, and you go, yeah, we've got like Luton Town away, first game of the season, and then you're looking at the Premier League fixtures, and first weekend, Man United are playing Liverpool, or
not the same.
Like, yeah, but honestly, it hits home. You think that's where I want to be. That's where I want to be. So yeah, it was like this is what we're going to do, and Martin O'Neill brought his staff in, and just a bit of a strange guy. I thought, not somebody who I could honestly say I connected with.
Why? Let's go into that a bit more.
Just felt he was a bit like an old-fashioned manager, a bit like he'd obviously been really
influenced,
affected, but he'd taken a lot out of the Brian Clough era, and the way that Brian Clough managed, and I'm sure that was fantastic at the time. But I think football was evolving. you know, and I don't think you could just come in to a dressing room and shout and bawl and bully players and threaten them and, you know, and sort of like try and scare them really. Felt that at times he was your best mate. Real was your best mate, and then at the flick of a switch, he was like your worst enemy. It was a bit of a strange, um, carry on, really. And we, you know, we didn't see that much of him either. You know what I mean? You'd be out training, and he'd appear from nowhere. You'd be doing some ball work or some session work, and he'd appear from nowhere, and he'd absolutely run the cobblers off you for half an hour, and then just disappear again. And you're like,
you don't know if you're here or there, do you?
yeah, all a bit bizarre, really. And I don't think it was. Oh, I mean, we started great. We started at Luton away and 3-1. I bagged myself a brace, and it was like, yeah, you know what I mean. What a start to the season this is gonna, you know, really kick on. And
screamer from Neil Adams as well in that game.
Yeah. He upstaged me. He did, yeah.
That one. I've got brace and you still mug me up.
So yeah, and it just and the season seemed to like rumble on a little bit, and then there was a lot of stuff off the field. And the one thing I would say about Martin O'Neill, he always kept me in the loop as a captain. So he sort of like came to me probably October, November time and said, "Look, you're playing well, and there's clubs who are interested in you." You know, and told me like you know, Villa was still interested in me, and I think Spurs had shown an interest in me. So he was good in that respect, that he was doing that, but yeah, the way he'd sort of like he'd want to punish you, it was just a bit bizarre, really.
How does that feel? Sorry, Dave. How does that feel, John? Like when you're being told like other clubs, obviously bigger in terms of bigger leagues, bigger massive teams, like does that kind of influence your kind of training process? Does that make you feel like good that you're performing well, or does it kind of, you see some players it has a real detrimental effect on, and some it really spurs on? I was just wondering how like you kind of felt about it, really.
Yeah, it didn't really make that much difference to me. I didn't think, really. I just thought, well, there's nothing, you can't influence it. You can't, you know, well, I suppose you can influence it. You can influence it by performing, you know. So, you know, if you go out and do the things that have got people interested in you, if you keep those levels and maybe even improve, or then who knows what's going to happen. But I wasn't looking to leave the club. You know, I was here. I've been told by Robert Chase, we're going to try and get in the Premier League. I want you to stay. So maybe a bit of naivety, I'd taken him for his word, and I was happy to stay and give it a real bash, you know. And just, I don't know, just obviously stuff was happening off the field that we weren't aware of. And then just a bomb. I think we were playing Leicester on the Sunday, and I think we came into train on the Friday, and Martin O'Neill wasn't there, and somebody just said, "Oh yeah, he's gone." And we were like, "What?" He was like, "Yeah, he's gone. He's gone."
Is it fair to say that Martin O'Neill and Robert Chase were at loggerheads for most of that season? Were you aware of that as a player?
Yeah, I mean, I was aware, but in all honesty, Martin O'Neill was at loggerheads with like most people as well. You know what I mean? And that's not. Listen, a lot of respect for the guy. What he's done in the game, he's outstanding. At that time, I just didn't see eye to eye to him, and there was a lot of lads who didn't. So yeah, I mean, yes, obviously we were aware that there was issues off the field, but it literally just came out of the blue. We came in for training, and like, no, he's gone, he's left.
How does that feel like the squad and yourself thinking, bloody hell, what's going on in this club? It's like
Yeah, bit of a blow, really. If in all honesty, even though I wasn't his greatest fan, but it was a blow to think, well, what happens to our plans now? The plans of what's happening to this promotion push, what's happening to what's going off, sort of thing, and yeah, it started getting a bit touchy and a bit messy, really.
In that sort of period, Norwich went from European games against Bayern Munich to eventually finishing 16th in the what is now the Championship that season. I mean, in the space of 4 seasons, that's a fair drop. You were there for a good chunk of that time. What would you attribute that to mainly? Is it on the field stuff or off the field stuff?
I think it's got to be both, hasn't it? You've got, I don't think the club. I mean, they invested in me, so I can't say anything. They invested in me, but then, as you touched on, then you've sold Chris Sutton and made massive profit on that. You've sold Efanakoku, you've sold Mark Robbins, you brought in Ashley Ward, I think Mike Sherrin.
Yeah.
But it just thing when you get a bit older and you get a bit wiser, you see the workings off the field, how it affects on the field, and yeah, it was just the club was in a bit of a free fall, wasn't it, really? And I think that second season of mine, we got to sort of like January time. I mean, you tell me, at what point did Martin O'Neill go to? When did he leave and go?
I think it was before the January. He wasn't here long, was he?
And I remember, Meggie came in as manager, and Meggie was great, but we got a really young. We got a sort of like half the team were experienced players, and the other half of the team were like really young kids coming through, and then it just became a bit of a whirlwind that I was obviously going to be leaving at some point, but where was the question, really? And it was just a matter of managing that and still trying to do your best for the club and putting in as good a performance as you could, really.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the ins and outs there over the time that you were at the club. Eventually, in the March, you leave for Sheffield Wednesday. I was listening to a previous interview you'd done, and it sounded like, well, it wasn't a straightforward transfer, was it?
No, not at all. Not at all. It was bizarre, really. I got let me work this out. I think it was a Wednesday morning. We got the day off, and I got a phone call early in the morning, 7:30, 8 a.m. And it was, I answered the phone. It was David Pleat, Sheffield Wednesday manager. And he said, introduced himself. We've had an offer accepted by Norwich City, and we'd like you to come up and have talks. So I said, "Oh, right, okay. Well, I need to speak to my agent and blah blah blah, and obviously we'll get back to you." So rang my agent, who was using the PFA at the time, and he was up in like Blackburn area, and he got a meeting with somebody, and I said to him, "Right, well, I'll meet you in Nottingham at lunchtime." So I get in a car and start driving to Nottingham. And I've not heard anything from Norwich City at this time. And I get to about 5-10 minutes outside of Nottingham, and my phone rings, and it's Gary Megson, who's obviously manager at the time. And he said, "Have you heard the news?" So I'm like trying to act daft, and just said, "No, what do you mean?" He went, "Oh, well, they've accepted a bid from Sheffield Wednesday for you." So I was like, "Oh, right, okay." He said, "Where are you?" So I said, "Oh, I'm just going to meet one of my mates." I can't let on that I already know, and I've spoken, that I've had a call from David. So he said, "Well, you better turn your car around and come back here because Robert Chase wants to see you, or the chairman wants to see you, and you're not going anywhere until he's spoken to you. So I'm like, right, okay. What's all this about? You know what I mean?
That sounds a bit like getting called into the head teacher's office.
Yeah. Oh, it was big time, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I spin the car around, ring my agent, said, look, can't meet you. And he's like, well, I can't come to Norwich because I've got this meeting this afternoon. And I said, well, I'll go down and I'll see what he's got to say, and I'll just report back, sort of thing. So 2 hours back down to Norwich, pull up at Carrow Road. By this time it's I don't know, 3 o'clock, something like that. So go in, and bearing in mind you don't have a lot to do with the chairman of the club. You didn't get to see him that often, but the comparison of how he welcomed me when he signed me that day to me walking in on the day that he was selling me it was like chalk and cheese. You know what I mean? It was like so matter of fact. Come in, sit down. In the boardroom there was him, and he just said, look, I'm going to sell you. The club's like in dire straits. We need the money, and if you don't go, the club could be in real financial problems. So you've got to go, basically. So I was like, right, okay. So I was like, well, yeah, all right. I take that on board. What about the money that you owe me? And he was like, oh, no, I don't owe you any money. So I'm like, well, the conversation we had, we started the season when you did the amendment and this, and no, there's none of that. There's nothing in you. So I'm like, oh God. And thankfully I got my contract, a copy of my contract. And I was sat there, and he was coming in and going out, and they did owe me. They owed me some money anyway. They had to pay me up the bit what they owed me. But then I said, well, you owe me more than that because you owe me my loyalty bonus. And he's like, no, I don't. And so he's having this argument with me, and then he's disappearing. And 10 minutes later, he's coming back in. He said, I've got the club solicitor in the other room, and we've been through your contract. And I'm sat there on my own, like thinking, this is a bit on top, this really.
Yeah.
But then I'm ringing my agent, and he's going, don't sign anything, don't agree to anything. I'm like, no, I won't. And then and I'm like looking through my contract, I'm looking through this amendment, and couldn't find because you're scanning it, aren't you? You're not reading it, and you're all a bit of a tither. And so anyway, eventually I found the wording of that he owed me what he'd said he was going to owe.
Yeah.
So he came walking back in. I said, you need to come and look at this. So I pointed it out to him. And oh my word, it was like a burnt his house down. It was like he just turned with his face of thunder, and he just said something like, well, you better get yourself up to Sheffield then, hadn't you?
Oh.
And he turned and walked out the door. And I was just stood in the boardroom like by myself, thinking, wow,
after all that, I imagine it was a relief to get out, wasn't it?
In some ways, I suppose it was, yeah, because I was aware of the turmoil and all the rest of it. But yeah, just I don't know, probably leaves a bit of taste in your mouth a little bit. But yeah, just
be a bit of a unique character. Is that kind of like it sounds obviously like a one-off in any other business, but football's a weird one, isn't it? Is he kind of like the strangest kind of guy you've ever that had to deal with in that regard? Or
no, it's football's full of them.
Yeah,
it's full of them, honestly. There's some proper characters. Yeah. So no, he was. I listen. He'd said to me when I signed that they were going to build a new training ground. He came through on that. That's what he did. He got these plans of developing the ground, which the plans were put in place, and I know that's obviously happened since. And so I think he got the club's best interest at heart. I think his heart was in the right place. He just probably didn't go around about it in the right manner, sort of thing.
So you made your way back to your first club, Sheffield Wednesday. I think I'm right in saying that Spurs came in for you, but a bit late. You'd also had Villa the previous summer, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Do you wish you'd gone to Spurs or Villa?
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Obviously, what had happened is they'd accepted a bid of 1.6 million from Sheffield Wednesday, and Spurs were in for me. But Robert Chase had said to Spurs, you can only speak to me if you're paying £2 million. And they told me that. They'd actually told me that. So I was like, I went to Sheffield on the Thursday, and we had talks. And we didn't finalise anything. And they said to me, "Oh, come back tomorrow morning, let's thrash it out." So my agent had been getting calls and been in touch with the club, and the club were like, no, unless Spurs come up with 2 million, we're not, you're not going there. And Spurs were obviously saying, we're not paying 2 million when you're agreeing 1.6 with somebody else.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? It's just common sense, isn't it? So anyway, we went back on the Friday, and at Sheffield Wednesday, the offices are all underneath the stadium, so there's no mobile signal. So we were in there for an hour or two, and anyway, we thrashed it out and agreed to sign. And my agents also got Robert Chase going. He has got to leave this club. You need him. You've got to tell him to sign. And I was mental. And then agreed and signed, and we walked out from the officers and shook hands with everybody, and well done, congratulations, and all that. And walked out, and my agent's phone beeped, and he listened to it, and he just shook his head and went, "Listen at that." And it was Jerry Francis, the Tottenham manager, and he'd said they finally agreed to 1.6. So get yourselves down to Spurs. We want to have a chat. And
that's mad, isn't it? You must be thinking, what if, I guess?
Yeah, well, I say hindsight's wonderful, isn't it? Because I at the time I was joining my boyhood club. I was going back to my boyhood club. So I felt that I'd left that football club for like 100 grand or something, and they paid like 1.6 million to bring me back. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go back and stick it up a few people, really. So that was my mentality. I was also joining a club that I was sort of like, the season before had finished top half of the Premier League, and I was joining a club that was on the ascendancy, and we're buying a new training ground, and we're doing this and we're doing that, and in reality, probably within 6 or 12 months, I realised that the club was bubbling along and was actually, there was a lot of turmoil at the club, and it wasn't the club I joined wasn't the club that I thought I was joining, put it that way. So that probably adds to the feeling that maybe it turned out not to be the best move, really.
I think we'll leave it there. That rounds it off nicely. Jake, have you got anything else you want to ask, mate?
I think it's just a bog standard one. Who was your favourite manager throughout your career, and then probably the best player you've ever played with in terms of ability or kind of just mentality, really?
So, manager-wise, difficult one, really. I think the most thorough, and he was a great manager at the time, was Howard Wilkinson. The manager I most enjoyed playing my football under was John Dean. Yeah. Just because I think he was, the way that he treated me, and the way that he made me captain, and the responsibility he put on my shoulders, and You know, I mean, there's like occasions he'd call me in on a Friday and say, "Look, I'm thinking of playing this team tomorrow. What do you think?" And I'm
Nice.
like what? You know what I mean?
So, yeah, like, do you ever like tell your other players that? Do you ever say, "Oh, yeah, have a bit of," yeah, no,
You can never tell, you know. No, I mean, I had no input, but it was just like bouncing it off me, sort of thing, and getting my idea, and you know, going from where you're scratching your head whether you're going to be playing every week or not, and you're sub and you're getting messed around a little bit, to then having this manager who's like your best mate. And don't get me wrong, when I did something wrong or I wasn't playing my best, you know, they got into me and give it me. But yeah, so and I think that's why I think I played my best football in that time at Norwich City, really. So yeah, they're the two. And the best player I played with, tough one, because I played with some really good footballers, you know, some really, really good footballers. But the most influential, and probably the best, was Gordon Strachan at Leeds. You know, he was the sort of like the ultimate professional. He effectively ran the dressing room. He was like Howard Wilkinson's like number 2 at times. Proper fair guy. Gave me more than one rollicking. At the time, probably felt it was a bit unjust, but in hindsight, looking back, probably needed it, if not more. So yeah, and to this day, you know, bump into him, lovely guy. I always remember Tony DeRigo once saying that he was the only right winger he ever played against who dictated the game from right wing. And that's what he was. He was literally like a leader, but he was like a right winger, you know what I mean? Not like a central midfielder or a centre back. Or so yeah, he was he had a real aura about him.
Great stuff. I think we'll leave it there. Jon, it's been an absolute pleasure. You achieved a remarkable amount in just 2 seasons at the club. So thank you for coming on and chatting to us about it. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Good stuff. Me and Jake will be back soon. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.